Welcome to Eros and Exegesis. I am Evan Murray, Evan Francis Murray, and I got a beef. I got a bone to pick with YouTube. Just to get it off my chest really quickly, my channel is totally flagged as AI content, and it is ridiculous. Yes, my 6-second intro. I mean, there are pictures that I got to grok to make the pictures move. So yes, it's AI. What else? I use Adobe Podcast. Okay, and I just find it works better. Like I can see the words, I can edit the words better. It's an automatic mix down. I don't have to mess around with any settings or anything. I just click the button. It's very convenient. Now, my problem is the content of the podcast is not AI. This is me. This is my voice. This is the things that I've written, these notes I've taken, the essays I've written. These are my lectures, and they're being quantified as AI, and it's not fair. Okay, so shall we not judge someone by the content? The content, and not just the what it looks like, the character of their content, the character of their content, and the content of their character, and not by the pictures, not by the intro video, not by the software they use to record. How about that? I mean, can YouTube really not differentiate that I'm not an AI voice? Is that real? Anyways. All right, so today is Lysis. Lysis, the unfinished quest for a friend. And yes, this one too ends in aporia. But it gets, this kind of reminds me of the Parmenides, actually, because this twists a lot. Like the Parmenides is all about the one. Well, this is about friendship, and it just reaches into the nature of and outside of and what it's not. And friendship is one of life's most intimate and universal experiences. Yet the moment we pause to ask, what it actually is, the answer proves remarkably slippery. Is a friend someone who loves you? Someone you find useful? Someone who mirrors your own soul? Or perhaps someone who possesses everything you lack? Plato's Lysis takes this everyday puzzle and drags it into the harsh sunlight of Socratic questioning, turning a festive afternoon in an Athenian wrestling school to a philosophical battleground. The dialogue opens with a dramatic blush. The young Hippothales, is hopelessly infatuated with the beautiful aristocratic Lysis. But his clumsy flattery, his endless terrible poems praising the boy's noble ancestry, is swiftly dismantled by Socrates. To show Hippothales, I'm going with Hippothales here, okay? I'm sorry. I'm just going to go with that. Hippothales, you want to do that? Hippothales, Hippothales. Hippothales, how about that? To show Hippothales how a wise lover ought to behave, Socrates engages Lysis in a conversation that systematically humbles him. Stripping away the boy's wealth, beauty, and noble birth, Socrates reveals a shocking truth. Without wisdom, even Lysis is a slave in his own home, trusted with nothing and loved by no one. This is the first and most devastating blow to conventional thinking. Love cannot be won through empty praise, only earned through genuine understanding. But this is merely the opening salvo. As Lysis' close friend Menexenus joins the inquiry, Socrates pushes the investigation into increasingly abstract territory. They dismantle the idea that like is drawn to like. Birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. Good people have no need of each other. And they reject the notion that opposites attract, which would make justice the friend of injustice. They land on a promising hypothesis. The neither good nor bad, right? The sick body, the ignorant soul loves the good, the physician wisdom, because of the presence of the bad, would be disease, ignorance. So for a moment, the philosopher, aware of his own lack, seems to be the perfect model of love. Yet just as the argument finds its footing, it collapses under its own weight. If the good is only loved to escape the bad, then what happens when the bad vanishes? Does love itself disappear? Socrates traces the problem to an infinite regress of causes, desperately searching for a first friend. A first friend loved for its own sake. He finally suggests that desire itself is the cause, and that what we desire, what is Okian, what is kindred to our nature, okay? But this is the final insight. The final insight proves just as elusive as all the others. Then, with philosophical tension at its peak, the real world brutally intrudes. The boys' tutors arrive, drunk and speaking broken Greek, and drag Lysis and Menexius home. The festival ends, the inquiry is violently interrupted, Socrates laughs at the irony. They have all become, quote-unquote, figures of fun, claiming to be friends while utterly failing to define what a friend is. So this is not a philosophical failure. It is a deliberate and profound statement. By refusing to provide a neat packaged answer, Plato forces the ache of incompleteness onto us, the readers. We are left feeling the very lack that, according to the dialogue, makes love and philosophy possible in the first place. The Lysis does not give us a definition of friendship. It gives us the desire to keep searching for one. To help navigate this winding, paradoxical, and often deeply frustrating masterpiece, the following breakdown maps the dialogue step by step using the standard Stephanus page numbers. Each section captures the dramatic action, the precise philosophical move, and the exact moment of triumph or collapse. Whether you are a student preparing for a class or a curious reader venturing into Plato for the first time, this guide will serve as your compass through the labyrinth of the Palestra. Let us begin where Socrates first stops to blush. When we look at the Lysis, remember that we aren't just reading a transcript, we are eavesdropping on a live wrestling match. Keep these 4 moments I'm going to discuss with you now in mind as we work our way through the Stephanus numbers. So the first one is the political shadow in the enclosure. Don't let the setting fool you. The Palestra isn't just a place for athletics. It's a site of educational commodification run by Maikakos. Now, the Greek pronunciation of these names is, Mikakos, the English, the way it's written in the books when you read them is Miccus, which is, Mikas, I guess it would be in English. But in the ancient Greek, it would be like Mikakos or something like this, okay? Anyways, it's a site of educational commodification run by Mikakos, a sophistic associate, okay? So this guy he's a sophist. And look closely at the cast here. Cetaphus, Menexenus, and Lysis are young aristocrats. When you read the dialogue, notice how the physical wrestling matches of the boys mirror the dialectical wrestling matches Socrates forces them into. The tension isn't just in the argument, it's in the room itself. 2. The proverb of commonality. Koiona tafilon. This is a 207C. This is our benchmark. Socrates drops this high-minded Pythagorean proverb. Friends have all things in common. This is to set an ideal of absolute reciprocity. Pay attention to what happens next. This beautiful idealistic social proverb is put through the meat grinder of Socratic cross-examination. By the time Socrates is finished, the proverb is shattered, forcing us to admit we don't actually know what sharing or commonality truly means. 3. The father, the hemlock, and the clay cup. 219D through 2020B use this parable to distinguish between utility and value. We often love people because they are useful to us, like a cup of wine to cure an illness. But Socrates forces us to confront a haunting question. If we only love others to fill our own lack, is our love selfish? The proton philon, the first friend, Socrates thinks we can love entirely for its own sake, not just for what it fixes in us. Ask yourself, if your own lack were cured tomorrow, would you still love your friends? 4. The demonic interrupters. This is happening in 2023A. When the tutors burst in, look at how Plato describes them as daemons, spirits of some sort, speaking barbaresque tones like broken barbarian Greek. This isn't just a scene change, it's symbolic. In Greek literature, a daemon is a force of fate. These drunken non-Athenian tutors represent the raw, unrefined reality of the polis. Philosophy is a beautiful festival of the mind, but the physical world always returns, violently and necessarily, to drag the soul back down to its daily duties. So we're going to look at the Stephanos section now with a dramatic and philosophical event summary. And I'm going to talk about the key dialogue here and the key dialogue and the analytical points, as we go through the text. Okay, so starting with the 203A and 204A, this is the enclosure of desire. Socrates is stopped outside the city wall by Hippothales and Sisyphus. They invite him to enter a newly built wrestling school, the Palestra, where young men spend their time in discussion. The pedagogical frame is Socrates learns that his friend Mikakos, whom he praises as a competent man of wisdom, which is in 204A, is the teacher here, establishing an immediate atmosphere of education and sophistic instruction. 204A through 206C, the lover exposed. Socrates diagnoses Hippothales as being hopelessly in love. Sisyphus mockingly reveals that Hippothales has deafened their ears with terrible poems celebrating the wealthy ancestry and divine lineage of the beautiful youth Lysis. The Socratic critique of courtship, that's what we're seeing here. Socrates warns that praising a beloved before winning them makes the query arrogant, phronema, and harder to capture. True courtship must soothe the beloved, not puff them up. That's 206A. All right, from there, we're going into 206C through 207B, entering the festival. Hippothales begs Socrates for instruction on how to win Lysis's affection. Socrates offers a live demonstration. They enter the school during the festival of Hermes, where ordinary social boundaries are temporarily suspended. Keep that in mind. And Lysis and his companion, Menexius, which is another dialogue that some people are not really sure if Plato wrote or not, they join Socrates' circle. The hiding lover. So Hippothales hides behind the crowd to listen to Socrates without annoying Lysis, setting up a layer of intense dramatic irony that persists through the dialogue. And that's happening at 207B. 207B through 207D, the Pythagorean premise. So Socrates sits with Lysis and Menexius, playing the role of a curious elder. He playfully asks which of them is older, more noble, more handsome, or more wealthy. When they claim to be equal because they are friends, Socrates introduces the seminal Greek proverb. Friends have all things in common. Koina te philon. Socrates establishes philia as a state of absolute sharing and community. Koinoia. 207C. Setting up the core premise that the rest of the dialogue will systematically test and dismantle. 207D through 211A, the dialogue 1, Socrates and Lysis, the humbling. Menexius is called away by the trainer. Something to do with the festival, maybe to, it differs in different translations. All right, so Menexius is called away by the trainer. Yes, Socrates cross-examines Lysis, demonstrating that despite his parents' immense love, they forbid him from driving the chariot, managing the mules, or touching his mother's looms, entrusting these tasks instead to hired hands and slaves. The rule of the wise, epistemene. Socrates reveals that Lysis is enslaved in his own home because he lacks knowledge. That's in 209C. Freedom and love are conditional upon utility and wisdom. Quote, if you actually become wise, everyone will love you, for you will be useful and good. 210D. Lysis is humbled and blushes, awakening to his own ignorance. 211A through 211E, the passionate interlude. Menexius returns. Lysis playfully whispers to Socrates, begging him to administer the same cross-examination to Menexius. Socrates prepares to engage Menexius, but first confesses his own lifelong obsessive desire to Hippothales and the boys. Socrates' obsession with friends. Socrates declares that since childhood, he has had a burning passion to acquire friends, preferring a true companion above quails, cockerels, horses, dogs, or all of Darius's gold. 211E. This reframes the abstract dialogue as Socrates' personal erotic quest. And I gotta say, I'm just gonna take a little detour here. Even throwing the word erotic in here, I mean, it's like Eros in my podcast. It has nothing to do with the sexual pleasure. It's more of the state of pleasure. It's the passion. It's what is truly giving the, your these good feelings. It's sensuous. It's a heightened sense of sensibility, let's say, of enjoyment. But again, let's not be in any sort of denial here. There's all kinds of homosexuality riddled throughout Plato's dialogues. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just the way the Greek society was. I mean, it just really seems that boys were with boys all the time and women were with women all the time. And there was major differences between the genders. And it was like natural for men to appreciate the physique and the power and the intelligence of another man to the point of, I guess, crushing on him, in that sort of way. By today's standards, it's alien to us because we instantly derive homosexuality out of that. But again, we're also in a society where men and women don't really have any boundaries. I mean, they even have mixed bathrooms now. So I just think the thing is we have to take like erotic and these kind of things, and we kind of have to make sure that we're not talking about that the Greeks were just all about like male orgies or completely obsessed with homosexuality. I don't think that's the way it was. I think that because of the sexes being completely isolated from each other, for this societal roles, and also because of the way that masculinity and femininity were completely segregated as well. I believe that what we would define as homosexuality nowadays, I don't think it worked the same way. Again, I think that it was kind of normal for men to crush on each other back then because they were always together. I don't think they were having sex with each other. I just think that they were, again, like kind of being intimate, like sharing the intimacy of their feelings, of their, of their thoughts on beauty and, I guess it would be like that kind of thing. I'm trying to imagine for myself, but I know that society would have been very alien to how we understand society now, which would also give a big differential of the norms, right? Okay, back to the program here. 211E through 213D. Dialogue 2, phase 1, lover versus beloved. Socrates tests Menexenus on the reciprocity of philia. If A loves B, who is the friend? If only the lover is the friend, we run into the absurdity of loving horses or dogs that do not love back. If only the beloved is the friend, we hit the paradox of an infant being dearest friends to the parent who is actively punishing them. Aporia of reciprocity, the attempt to define friendship purely by the direction of feeling, loving or reception, being loved, this collapses. It is logically impossible to be friends with those who hate you, yet conventional categories fail to explain the bond. That happens in 213B. All right, 213E through 216C. Dialogue 2, phase 2, like versus opposite. Addressing Lysis again, Socrates summons the poets and natural philosophers. He explores Homer's dictum that God ever draws like to like. That, again, like the birds of the feather that flock together. 214A. And the cosmological view that similar natures align. He then counters with Hesiod's view that Potter is angry with Potter, 215C, arguing that like is useless to like, and instead opposites attract. Subverting the tradition. Socrates pits the poetic and the pre-Socratic cosmological traditions against one another. Like cannot be friends to like because self-sufficient good people have no need of each other. 215A. Opposite cannot be friend to opposite because that would force justice to be friends with injustice. 216b. All right, friends. Enemies, frenemies. 216c through 218c. Dialogue 2, Phase 3, the tripartite ontology. Socrates introduces a third category, the neither good nor bad. Example, the human body or soul. The body, which is neither good nor bad, is driven to love medical treatment, which is good, because of the presence of disease, which is bad. 217b. The slippery beautiful. Socrates describes the beautiful, to kalon, as something soft, smooth, and slippery that constantly eludes their grasp. 216c. He establishes erotic epistemology. The philosopher is in between, possessing the bad of ignorance, but yet rendered senseless by it. Let's not rendered senseless by it. I think that's where we're going with this. He's possessing the bad of ignorance, but he's not rendered senseless by it, and thus driven to the desire. And this is what's going to change this whole entire thinking now, the desire to seek the good of wisdom. 218a. Refutation of need and the proton philon. Socrates is this is a 218c through 221c. Socrates is suddenly seized by a strange suspicion that their progress is a dream. 218c. He reveals that if B is loved for the sake of C, they will enter an infinite regress until there is a primary, ultimate object of love. He refutes the idea that bad is the sole cause of love, showing that desires like hunger would exist even if evil were eliminated. And this is the parable of the hemlock and the wine cup. Socrates illustrates the first friend, proton philon, 219d, a father who values his son above all else will value wine and even the clay cup containing it if the son has drunk hemlock. 219e. The wine and cup are valued only instrumentally. The son is the true object of concern. Similarly, all proximate friendships are images of ultimate good, loved for their own sake. 221d to 222e, dialogue 2, and now we're going into phase 4, desire and kinship, okion. Socrates proposes that desire is the true cause of friendship, and we desire what we lack. What we lack is that which is kindred to us by nature, okion. 221e. Therefore, friends are kindred, and a genuine, unpretentious lover must logically be loved in return by, his or their beloved. The climax of dramatic irony. Upon hearing that a beloved must love his true lover, Hippothales turns all sorts of colors in his hiding spot in sheer ecstasy, while Lysis remains reluctantly silent. 222b. However, the argument collapses back into likeness. If kindred means like is useless to like. If it means good, the bad can never be kindred. So basically all definitions here now fail. 223a through 223b, the interrupted festival. Just as Socrates prepares to engage an older interlocutor, the boys' tutors forcefully break in, described as behaving like spirits of some sort. We talked about this earlier, the daemontines. They speak angrily in broken Greek. having drunk too much at the festival and dragged Lysis and Menexius home. The brutal return to the cave. Socrates concludes with a final wry declaration of aporia. He notes the ultimate irony. They have become figures of fun, claiming to be friends of one another, yet utterly unable to discover what a friend actually is. 223b. All right, so now let's get inside of this. And let us begin with a thought experiment. All right. Imagine a person who is perfectly self-sufficient. They possess absolute wisdom, flawless beauty, endless wealth, and unfailing health. They lack nothing. They lack for nothing. Now ask yourself, would this perfect being ever seek out a friend? If friendship is driven by a need to share, to grow, or to find comfort, what use would a complete and untroubled soul have for companionship? So this puzzle is not just a modern psychological curiosity. It is the beating heart of one of the most enigmatic works in classical philosophy. When we ask why we are drawn to others, we are forced to confront our own incompleteness. And we are definitely stepping into the sunlight, dusty courtyard of an ancient Athenian wrestling school to watch this very realization unfold. So we've been diving into Plato's Lysis. It's a masterclass in exposing the fragile foundations of human connection. What we have witnessed here is not a neat mathematical proof defining what a friend is. Instead, what we have been seeing is a dramatic synthesis of existing Socratic thought, what we might call, erotic epistemology. This is the profound insight that our ignorance and our incompleteness are not moral failures, rather, but they are the very sparks that make philosophy and love, combine and work together. So let's just now take a look at this lover versus beloved, the algorithmic affection. So this is going to correspond with 211E through 213D. So here, do this for me. Scroll through your social media feed. An influencer posts a picture of their morning coffee captioned with a heart. 10,000 followers double tap, right? In their stories, they say, I love you guys so much. But I mean, is this even real? Socrates would stop us here and ask the cruel question. So who is the friend in this transaction? If the lover is the friend, then the influencer is the true friend to their followers. Yet they have never met them, would not recognize them on the street, and would drop them instantly if the algorithm changed. We call men horse lovers, even when the horse bites the hand that feeds it. We call influencers beloved, even when their audience is indifferent or hate watching or scrolling past with a flicker of resentment. If we flip the equation and say the beloved is the friend, then we must admit that a follower who never comments, never buys, and secretly mocks the influencer is still the influencer's dearest companion. Absurdity piles upon absurdity. Plato's point lands harder than ever. We are saturated with connections, yet we cannot define a single one. The ancient wrestling school had its Hippothales, blushing over a single beautiful boy. We have 10,000 blushes per second, each one vanishing before it can be named. Are we friends with our followers? Are they friends with us? Or have we simply automated the ache of lack into a metric, reducing philia to an engagement rate? The Lysis offers, Lysis offers no answers here, and only the unsettling recognition that we love and we are loved, but we have no idea what that actually means. So what about like versus opposite, the rivalry of mirrors? And this will correspond to 213a through 216c. So Homer told us that, quote unquote, God ever draws like to like. And Hesiod fired back, quote unquote, Potter is angry with Potter. So watch any modern office and you will see Hesiod's bitter wisdom come to life. Two ambitious young lawyers graduate of the same elite program, sharing the same drive, the same hunger, the same impeccable suits. Homer would predict a brotherhood for the ages. Instead, they are locked in a death grip for the partnership track. Their similarity does not draw them together, it sharpens their knives. But flip the coin. Think of the chaotic, disorganized artist who falls into the orbit of a hyper-meticulous, color-coded accountant. The opposites attract like magnets. The accountant saves the artist from bankruptcy, the good remedy for the bad. The artist drags the accountant to spontaneous gallery openings, the chaotic remedy for the rigid. Yet Socrates warns us, if opposites are natural friends, then justice must befriend injustice, and the good must love the bad. Does the artist love the accountant, or do they love what the accountant fixes? Does the accountant love the artist, or do they love the permission to feel messy for a night? Plato forces us to see that neither similarity nor difference can ground friendship. Similarity breeds rivalry or useless self-sufficiency. Difference breeds dependency or moral catastrophe. We are left in the empty courtyard, realizing that the superficial traits we swipe for, likes me, challenges me, completes me, these are all broken compasses. The Lysis does not tell us where to point. It merely shows us that our compasses are rusted shut. All right, what about neither good nor bad? The confused student and the patient tutor. So this will correspond to 216c through 218c. All right, so again, here's another parable for you. Let's try to wrestle with this. Picture a high school student hunched over a quadratic equation. Tears blur the numbers. They hate mathematics. It feels like a personal attack, a language designed to humiliate them. This hate is the bad, the disease of the soul. Now, enter a tutor, patient and clear, who speaks in calm tones and build bridges where there were only chasms. The student does not love the tutor for the tutor's sake. They love the tutor because the tutor rescues them from the dread. The neutral soul, neither good, neither bad, is driven toward the good, wisdom, by the presence of the bad, confusion. This is the glorious, fragile heart of what we call erotic epistemology. The student's ignorance is not a dead end. It is the engine. They seek knowledge because they know they lack it. Socrates would say the student is the perfect philosopher, possessing the bad of confusion, but not yet rendered senseless by it, and thus yearning for the good of understanding. But watch closely. What happens when the final exam passes and the student finally gets it? Does the love for the tutor vanish the moment the confusion evaporates? If love is merely a fever breaking, was it ever love at all? Plato refuses to let us rest here. The tutor is a placeholder for the good, and the student is a placeholder for desire. The Lysis, it tells us this haunting truth. We are never fully healed, and if we were, we might stop loving entirely. Perhaps the ache of not knowing is not a sickness to be cured, but the very pulse of our humanity. The first friend, the infinite regress of instrumental love. And this is corresponding through 218C through 221C. All right. Consider the concert pianist who swears they love their grand piano. But do they love the wood and wire? Or do they love the music that it produces? And do they love the music, or do they love the feeling of transcendence it gives to them? That swelling moment when the audience holds its breath. Follow the chain here. The piano for the music for the feeling for the approval for the self-worth. And where does it end? Socrates draws the line with a brutal parable. A father loves his son above all else. The son drinks hemlock. Funny he uses this. The father rushes for wine, and even the clay cup holding the wine to save his son. The wine and the cup are loved only for the sake of the son. If the son were cured, or say like he never drank the hemlock, the cup would be tossed aside. Socrates demands that there must be a first friend, a proton philon, something loved entirely for itself, not as a means to anything else. For Plato, this is the good itself. In our world, we are drowning in instrumental love. We love jobs for paychecks, paychecks for houses, houses for status, status for social media likes, and likes for what? We rarely stop the regress. We rarely ask the question, why do I love for its own sake? If you cannot name the terminal anchor, your entire chain of affection, well, it's a house of cards. The Lysis does not give you the first friend. It merely shows you that without one, every friendship is just a transaction waiting to expire. Yes or no? All right. Okean, okay? And this is sounds very Aristotelian. Okean, the kinship we cannot name. This corresponds to 221D through 222E. We scroll desperately. Oh my. We scroll desperately through dating apps, thirsty for a spark. Socrates says that spark is the recognition of Okean, that which is kindred to our nature. It is not that the stranger looks like us or thinks like us. It is that they complete a sentence our soul started writing long before we were born. When you met a true friend and feel that inexplicable gravitational pull, you are not meeting a stranger. You are recognizing a piece of yourself that was lost, a fragment of your own native wholeness. But Plato immediately tightens the noose. If kindred simply means then we are back to the refuted argument that is useless to like. If kindred means something else, some hidden metaphysical bond, we cannot define it. The word slips through our fingers the moment we try to grip it. So here is the modern tragedy. All right, so we swipe, we match, we chat, and we ghost. We mistake similarity for kinship or difference for excitement. We are reaching for an original wholeness, but we have forgotten what the original looked like. The Lysis leaves us in the exquisite agony of knowing we desire something without being able to name what it is. We are like patients who know they are ill but cannot read the prescription. The kindred is out there waiting, but we would not recognize it if it walked into the wrestling school and sat down right beside us. Yeah. And yet, sorry, I had to use the dating app thing because it's so prevalent. I don't mean to be like cliche, but if you've ever been on dating apps, like I know I have, and I wish the world was not like this, but it's the world we live in, I'm living in Taiwan, and the culture is, well, I think it's like a culture of where people are very familiar with each other. They grow up together, or they stay friends. They don't much go outside of their own circles. Well, as a foreigner, as a white guy who doesn't speak Chinese, it's it's a little bit isolating. I do meet some people, but it's, on the other side, it's also exciting. So I've been married here twice already. Both ended in horrific circumstances. My God, yeah, that's for a different podcast. But the thing is that when you're meeting women on dating apps, there's, obviously it's because you want to have some sort of connection. You want something, right? You want something. And when you meet somebody, some people, maybe if they're sociopathic, they just want to have the physical rewards and then they can just keep going through different people. But when we meet someone that we feel like we have a deep connection with, there's something there, what is that thing, right? Like, what is that thing that makes you feel like you're kindred spirits? What is that value of the connection? Well, obviously the value is the opposite of loneliness, right? It's the opposite of isolation. But what is it made of? And again, like, it's still, it may be secret to us at the time. Like, it's something that we just can't reveal to ourselves. But there's reasons why that we connect. There's obvious reasons, the nature of beauty. We connect with beauty, but we also connect with the feeling of security, and we connect with the feeling of comfort, which is, again, like, security would be part of that. It's dimensional, and it's occurring all at once. And there's just nothing like that feeling, definitely. So I want to just go out here with, I love to talk about Frankenstein, and one guy I haven't talked about in a long time, and I don't know if I've even talked about him on this podcast, but that's Kahlil Gibran. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the wanderer's wealth and the monster's hope. So Kahlil Gibran wrote, "Wealth is not in riches alone. Many of the wealthiest men are wanderers." And I believe the Lysis teaches us that the richest soul is not the one who possesses wisdom, beauty, or friendship. The richest soul is the one who knows they lack these things and walks the road outside the walls, still seeking the self-sufficient being, perfect, complete, needing nothing, is the poorest of all, because they have no desire, and without desire there's no potential for love, and without love there is no philosophy. To wander is to admit that you are incomplete, and maybe it is the truest wealth. And so we end with one final parable drawn from the pages of Mary Shelley. The creature, Frankenstein's monster. He wanders the frozen waste, reveled by every human who sees his hideous form. But there's a point where he finds an old man, and, the old man is blind and alone in a remote cottage. Because the old man cannot see the creature's monstrous face, he listens to his voice, and he feels his soul. The old man is lonely. He lacks sight and companionship. The creature lacks acceptance and a kindred spirit. They are both neither good nor bad, flawed, incomplete, desperately unfinished. They speak, they share, and for a brief, fragile moment, for that little space of time that they have together, they are friends. The creature feels the okian, the kinship he has been denied since his violent birth. Then the villagers arrive. They are the tutors. This is so back right into the Lysis, right? They're broken Greek, spirits of the city. They see only the monster, judge only the surface, and drive him away with torches and screams. The festival is interrupted. The old man flees. The creature howls into the void and swears vengeance. Because to love and to be rejected is worse than to have never loved at all. But here is the lesson that the Lysis leaves us. The creature's brief friendship with the blind man was very real. It was not a definition. It was an event. It was an ache satisfied for a single, shining while. Maybe a shining hour. Maybe I can't remember exactly. I thought that in the book he stayed with him for a season, but I just can't remember it now. But anyways, this interruption by the broken Greek spirits, at the end of the Lysis. Yeah, the interruption did not erase the friendship. It proved that the truth was fragile, fleeting, and bounded by the mundane demands of the world. But that friendship was true. We are all this creature wandering the road outside the wall, seeking the old blind man who will hear us without seeing our flaws. The tutors will always come. The festival will always end. But the ache remains. And the ache is the search. And the search, Plato writes to us, is that the only wealth, friendship, is the only wealth that cannot be taken from you. Or is it? Or is it just the search? Is that the wealth? The wandering, the learning, the experience of loving and losing? Is that the wealth? And isn't it interesting that Socrates calls out a final wry observation that we have all become figures of fun, claiming to be friends, yet utterly unable to discover what a friend actually is. This ending is not a mistake. It is not Plato running out of ideas. It is a profound dramatic statement about the nature of philosophy itself. Philosophy is an interrupted festival. It is a temporary, intoxicating suspension of ordinary life, where we can seek the eternal, but it is always bounded by the crude, drunken, broken Greek demands of the physical world. Plato refuses to give us this neat packaged definition of friendship because any static definition would kill the desire to keep searching. By leaving the dialogue unresolved, he transfers the ache of incompleteness from the characters directly into us. We walk away from the Lysis realizing that to love is to lack, and that our profound native emptiness is the greatest gift we have. It is the void that invites the universe in. The festival is over. The tutors are calling. But tomorrow, the search begins again. Happy swiping.